"Run!" someone shouted behind her, but Emma Carter had already stopped. The sound that caught her attention wasn't the laughter echoing across the clearing or the music drifting from the moon gathering. It was a frightened cry coming from somewhere deep in the trees, small enough to be ignored by everyone else and desperate enough that she couldn't. A cold wind swept across the valley as Emma stood at the edge of the festival grounds, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. Just minutes ago, she had been standing beneath the silver lanterns with every eye in the pack watching her. Just minutes ago, she had heard the words she would never forget. The rejection itself had been brief, public, humiliating. The future she had spent years believing in had disappeared in front of hundreds of wolves, and no one had stepped forward to defend her. Some looked away. Some whispered. A few even smiled. Emma had held herself together long enough to leave the gathering before the tears could fall. Now she walked alone beneath towering pine trees, putting distance between herself and the celebration continuing without her. The farther she went, the quieter the world became. The music faded. The voices disappeared. Only the rustling branches remained. She told herself she should keep walking. She told herself she should go home, lock the door, and pretend none of it had happened. But then she heard the cry again. Thin, weak, frightened. Emma stopped. Her chest tightened. She listened carefully. There it was, somewhere ahead, moving through the underbrush. She pushed through a cluster of bushes and stepped into a narrow game trail winding through the forest. The cry came again, closer this time. Whatever it was sounded exhausted. Her pace quickened. Fallen leaves crunched beneath her boots as she followed the sound through the trees. The afternoon sky was already turning gray, and shadows stretched across the ground like long fingers. Then she saw movement. A flash of silver fur disappeared behind a fallen log nearly 30 yards ahead. Emma froze. For a second she thought she imagined it. Then another cry echoed through the woods. Definitely real. Definitely scared. She took a cautious step forward. "Hey," she called softly. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The forest remained silent. Emma moved closer. As she rounded the fallen log, her breath caught. A small wolf pup stood on the opposite side. It couldn't have been more than a few months old. Its pale silver coat was streaked with dirt and leaves. One tiny paw barely touched the ground. Large amber eyes watched her carefully. Not with aggression. With fear. The pup looked exhausted. Alone. Lost. Emma slowly lowered herself into a crouch. "Well," she whispered, her voice gentler now. "I guess today hasn't been very kind to either of us." The pup stared at her. Something about its eyes felt unusual. Intelligent. Almost human. Before she could think about it further, a distant shout suddenly echoed through the trees. Then another. The pup immediately stiffened. Fear flashed across its face. Emma turned toward the sound. Voices. Several of them. Getting closer. Branches snapped somewhere beyond the ridge. Whoever was out there was searching for something. The pup backed away, trembling. Emma looked from the frightened animal to the approaching voices and felt a strange certainty settle into her heart. Whatever was happening, this little wolf was terrified, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she knew she couldn't leave it behind. The voices grew louder. Emma could make out at least 4 men moving through the woods somewhere beyond the ridge. Dry branches cracked beneath heavy boots, and every sound seemed to send another wave of fear through the small wolf pup standing only a few feet away. Its ears flattened. Its body trembled. For a moment, Emma forgot about her own heartbreak. She forgot about the rejection, the whispers, and the humiliation she had left behind at the festival. All she could see was a frightened creature looking at her, as if she were its last chance. The pup took a hesitant step backward. Then another. It was preparing to run. Emma slowly raised her hands. "Wait," she whispered. "Please do not be afraid." The amber eyes remained fixed on her. There was something unusual about the way it watched her. Most wild animals either fled immediately or showed signs of aggression when cornered. This pup did neither. Instead, it seemed to be studying her, judging her, deciding whether she could be trusted. Another distant voice echoed through the trees. "Spread out. It cannot have gone far." The pup flinched violently. Emma turned toward the sound and felt her stomach tighten. Whoever these people were, they were definitely searching for this little wolf. She looked back at the pup. "Are they after you?" she asked softly. The question felt ridiculous the moment it left her mouth. It was a wolf. It could not answer. Yet something strange happened. The pup lowered its head slightly and glanced toward the voices before looking back at her. Emma blinked. For one brief second, it almost felt like a response. The wind shifted. The scent of pine filled the air. Then Emma noticed something she had missed before. Around the pup's neck was a narrow leather band, partly hidden beneath its silver fur. It was worn and scratched, but clearly made by human hands. This was not some wild animal born deep in the forest. Someone had cared for it once. Someone had protected it. "You belong to somebody," Emma murmured. The pup remained still. More voices echoed through the trees. Closer now. Emma could hear frustration in their tone. They were searching methodically, patiently. She looked around. There was nowhere nearby for the pup to hide. No caves. No large rocks. Only scattered trees and open ground. If those men reached this spot, they would see it immediately. The pup seemed to realize the same thing. It lowered itself closer to the ground, as if trying to disappear. Emma's heart ached unexpectedly. She knew what it felt like to wish the world would stop looking at you, to want to vanish after being judged by everyone around you. Slowly, she stepped closer. The pup did not move away. "Listen," she whispered. "I do not know who you are, and I do not know why they are chasing you, but I am not leaving you here." Her voice shook slightly as she spoke, not because she was afraid of the animal, because she was afraid of what helping it might mean. The safest choice would be to walk away, to pretend she never saw it, to let someone else deal with whatever was happening. That was what most people would do. Yet Emma had spent her entire life wishing someone would choose kindness when it mattered. She could not become the kind of person who walked away now. The voices grew even closer. A shape moved between distant trees. Someone was approaching. The pup pressed itself against the fallen log, its breathing quick and shallow. Emma made her decision. Without another word, she carefully removed her coat and wrapped it around the small silver wolf. The pup stared at her in surprise. "Come on," she whispered. "We are getting out of here." Emma held the bundled pup close against her chest and moved quickly through the forest. The coat concealed most of its silver fur, but she could still feel its small body trembling beneath the fabric. Behind her, the voices continued to drift through the trees. Sometimes they sounded farther away, sometimes alarmingly close. The late afternoon light faded steadily as clouds gathered overhead, turning the forest floor into a maze of shadows and muted colors. Emma followed an old trail she remembered from childhood. Few pack members used it anymore because it wound through rough terrain and led away from the main roads. That was exactly why she chose it. Every few minutes, she glanced down at the pup. It remained quiet, its amber eyes peeking out from the folds of her coat. "You are doing great," she whispered. "Just stay hidden a little longer." To her surprise, the pup seemed to relax slightly at the sound of her voice. Its breathing slowed. The tension in its small frame eased. Emma smiled despite everything. It had been one of the worst days of her life, yet somehow protecting this tiny creature felt more important than her own pain. After nearly 20 minutes, she reached a narrow stream cutting through the forest. The water was only a few inches deep, but it stretched across the trail like a silver ribbon. Emma carefully crossed, hoping it would make their path harder to follow. As she stepped onto the opposite bank, she heard something unexpected. Laughter, not the distant voices from before. Closer, much closer. Her heart immediately sank. She crouched behind a cluster of bushes and listened. Two men emerged from between the trees less than 50 feet away. Both wore outdoor gear and carried equipment slung over their shoulders. They were scanning the woods carefully, searching. "The reward keeps getting bigger," one of them said. "I heard they doubled it this morning." Emma froze. "Reward?" The second man nodded. "For a pup, that is a ridiculous amount of money, which means it is not an ordinary pup." The first man glanced toward the deeper forest. Someone important wants it found. Emma instinctively tightened her hold on the bundle. Beneath the coat, she felt the pup go completely still. The two men continued walking, unaware they were being watched. Their conversation lingered in Emma's mind long after they disappeared. A reward. Someone important. Suddenly, the leather collar around the pup's neck seemed far more significant. Who exactly was this little wolf? Emma looked down as the pup carefully peeked out from the coat again. The amber eyes met hers. Intelligent. Alert. Almost understanding. "What kind of trouble are you in?" she murmured. The pup tilted its head slightly. Then something unexpected happened. A small paw slipped free from the blanket of fabric and rested against her hand. The gesture lasted only a second, but it made Emma's breath catch. It felt less like an animal seeking comfort and more like a child asking for trust. The sky darkened further. Night would arrive soon. They needed shelter. Emma knew of an abandoned ranger cabin about half a mile north. Nobody had used it in years. If they could reach it before sunset, they would have a safe place to rest. She adjusted the coat around the pup and stood. "Come on," she whispered softly. "Whatever is happening, we will figure it out together." Neither of them noticed the tall figure standing on a distant ridge nearly 200 yards away. Hidden among the pines, a pair of silver eyes watched every step Emma took as she carried the pup deeper into the forest. The abandoned ranger cabin appeared just as the last traces of daylight slipped behind the mountains. Emma had not seen the structure in years, yet it looked almost exactly as she remembered. The small wooden building sat alone among towering pines, its weathered walls blending into the darkening forest. Relief washed through her. Her legs ached from hours of walking, and the emotional exhaustion of the day seemed heavier with every step. She climbed the short porch and carefully pushed open the door. The hinges groaned softly. Dust covered nearly every surface inside, but the cabin remained sturdy. There was an old stone fireplace, a narrow table, and a pair of worn chairs. Most importantly, it offered shelter. Emma closed the door behind her and gently set the bundled pup onto a faded blanket she found near the fireplace. For several seconds, neither moved. Then the silver pup slowly emerged from the coat. Its amber eyes studied the room with surprising focus. Emma knelt beside it. "We made it," she said quietly. "At least for tonight." The pup blinked. Then, to her surprise, it nudged her hand with its nose. The simple gesture made her smile for the first time all day. She gathered a few pieces of dry wood stacked near the wall, and soon a small fire crackled inside the stone hearth. Warm light danced across the cabin, pushing back the darkness gathering outside. For a while, everything felt peaceful. Emma found an old metal bowl and filled it with fresh water from a nearby rain barrel. The pup drank eagerly. As it lowered its head, the leather collar became visible again. Emma studied it more closely. Strange symbols had been pressed into the worn material. They looked old, important, not something an ordinary family would place on a pet. Her curiosity grew stronger. "Who are you?" she whispered again. The pup lifted its gaze toward her. There was that strange intelligence once more, almost as though it understood every word. Suddenly, a gust of wind rattled the cabin windows. Emma glanced outside. Night had fully arrived. The forest beyond the glass looked endless and black. For a moment, an uneasy feeling settled in her chest. The men searching for the pup were still out there somewhere, and now she knew there was money involved. A large reward meant determined people. Determined people rarely gave up easily. She wrapped her arms around herself and stared into the fire. The events of the festival returned to her mind. The rejection, the embarrassment, the faces of wolves she had known her entire life looking at her with pity. Her throat tightened. She had spent years trying to earn acceptance from people who never truly saw her worth. Yet somehow, in a single afternoon, a frightened little wolf had trusted her more than her own pack ever had. The realization stung. The pup slowly walked closer and settled beside her near the fire. Its side pressed lightly against her leg. Emma looked down in surprise. "Thank you," she whispered. The pup rested its head on her knee. Outside, the wind continued to move through the trees. Deep within the darkness of the forest, hidden far beyond the cabin walls, silver eyes remained fixed on the small building. The mysterious observer had followed every mile of Emma's journey. And as the firelight glowed through the cabin window, those eyes softened for the first time all day. The Omega had chosen kindness when she had every reason not to. Few people would have done the same. Fewer still would have risked everything for a stranger. Emma woke sometime after midnight to the sound of rain tapping softly against the cabin roof. For a few disoriented seconds, she forgot where she was. Then the events of the day returned all at once. The festival, the rejection, the frightened silver pup sleeping beside the fire. She turned her head. The pup was still there, curled tightly on the blanket near the hearth. The orange glow from the dying embers illuminated its silver fur, making it seem almost unreal. Emma sat up carefully and added another piece of wood to the fire. Warmth slowly spread through the room again. Outside, the storm strengthened. Wind swept through the trees, causing branches to sway against the dark sky. The cabin creaked softly with each gust. Normally, being alone in the forest during a storm would have frightened her. Tonight felt different. The little wolf somehow made the empty cabin feel less lonely. As the flames brightened, the pup suddenly lifted its head. Its ears twitched. Amber eyes focused on the front door. Instantly alert, Emma noticed the change. "What is it?" she whispered. The pup rose to its feet. Every trace of sleep vanished. For several seconds it stared toward the door as if listening to something beyond the walls. Emma held her breath. She listened too. At first, she heard only rain. Then came another sound. Footsteps. Very distant, yet unmistakable. Her stomach tightened. The searchers were still out there. The pup moved closer to her side. Emma gently rested a hand on its back. "They are not going to find you," she whispered, though she was not entirely sure she believed it herself. The pup remained pressed against her leg. Together they listened as the distant sounds eventually faded back into the storm. Several minutes passed before the tension finally eased. The pup relaxed and settled beside her again. Emma exhaled slowly. "You really are important to someone," she murmured. "Nobody searches this hard for something ordinary." The pup lowered its head but remained awake. Firelight reflected in its eyes. For the first time, Emma noticed something hidden beneath the fur near its collar. A small silver emblem attached to the leather band. Curious, she leaned closer. The symbol resembled a crown surrounded by intricate markings she did not recognize. Her heart skipped. This was no ordinary collar. Wealthy families might use decorative designs, but this looked official, significant, almost royal. Before she could examine it further, the pup suddenly pulled back. Not aggressively, more like a child protecting a secret. Emma blinked in surprise. "All right," she said softly. "You do not have to tell me." A strange silence followed. Then something unexpected happened. The pup walked to the window and carefully climbed onto a chair. It stared into the storm beyond the glass. Not with fear, with longing. Emma watched quietly. For a brief moment, the little wolf looked less like a lost animal and more like someone waiting to go home. Her chest tightened. Whatever mystery surrounded this creature, one thing was becoming clear. It was not running from the forest. It was separated from someone it cared about. Far beyond the cabin, hidden among the rain-soaked pines, a tall figure stood motionless beneath the storm. King Rowan Blackwood watched the faint glow of the cabin window through the darkness. Relief settled over him for the first time in 3 days. His missing son was alive, safe, and the young Omega protecting him had no idea that the future of an entire kingdom was sleeping beside her fire. Morning arrived beneath a sky washed clean by the storm. Soft sunlight filtered through the cabin windows, painting golden patterns across the wooden floor. Emma woke slowly, surprised that she had managed to sleep at all. For the first time in months, her thoughts were not immediately consumed by worries about the pack or the future. Instead, her eyes searched for a flash of silver fur. Relief warmed her chest when she found the pup curled beside the fireplace, still sleeping peacefully. She smiled and quietly prepared for the day. Outside, the forest glistened with rainwater. Every pine needle sparkled beneath the morning sun. Emma stepped onto the porch and breathed deeply. The air smelled fresh and clean. For a few precious moments, everything felt calm. Then she noticed movement far below in the valley. Several riders were crossing an old logging road less than a mile away. Even from a distance, she could tell they were searching. Her stomach tightened instantly. They had not given up. Emma hurried back inside. The pup was awake now, watching her carefully. "We cannot stay here much longer," she said softly. "They are still looking." The pup stood and moved closer. Once again, that strange intelligence appeared in its amber eyes. Emma packed what little she had brought with her. As she worked, she noticed something odd. The pup kept glancing toward the northern mountains visible through the window. Not once, repeatedly, as if it recognized them, as if it wanted to go there. Emma followed its gaze. The distant peaks rose above the forest like silent guardians. She had heard stories about the territory beyond those mountains since childhood. Most wolves rarely traveled there. The land belonged to powerful packs and ancient bloodlines. "Do you want to go north?" she asked absent-mindedly. The pup immediately looked back at her. Emma laughed softly. "You really do understand more than you should." A few minutes later they left the cabin. The forest seemed different in daylight, less threatening. Yet Emma could not shake the feeling that unseen eyes were following them. Unbeknownst to her, she was correct. High above on a rocky overlook, Rowan Blackwood watched their departure. His silver gaze never left the Omega and his son. Every instinct urged him to step forward, to reveal himself, to end the search and bring Ash home immediately. Yet something stopped him. Over the past day, he had witnessed every choice Emma made. She had protected Ash when nobody expected her to. She had offered comfort without asking for anything in return. She had risked her own safety despite having every reason to walk away. Rowan had ruled kingdoms, negotiated treaties, and judged thousands of wolves. Rarely had he encountered kindness so genuine. Below, Emma and Ash continued along a narrow trail winding north. Neither noticed the royal scouts hidden deeper in the forest. They had finally picked up signs of the missing prince's location. News was already spreading. The reward had doubled again. More searchers were arriving by the hour. Some sought gold. Others sought favor with powerful leaders. The circle around Emma was slowly tightening. She remained unaware of all of it. Her attention stayed focused on the small silver pup trotting beside her. Then Ash suddenly stopped. His ears perked forward. His body became completely still. Emma followed his gaze and saw a weathered wooden sign standing beside the trail. Someone had recently nailed a fresh notice to its surface. Curious, she stepped closer. The moment she read the first line, the color drained from her face. A large reward was being offered for information leading to the recovery of a missing silver wolf bearing a royal crest. Beneath the notice was a detailed sketch. The resemblance to the pup standing beside her was impossible to ignore. Emma stared at the notice for several long seconds. The forest seemed to fall silent around her. She read the words again, hoping she had misunderstood. Missing silver wolf. Royal crest. Extraordinary reward. The sketch pinned to the weathered board looked almost identical to the pup standing beside her. Slowly, she lowered her gaze. Ash looked back at her with those same intelligent amber eyes. Suddenly, dozens of small details began connecting in her mind. The unusual collar, the strange symbols, the relentless search parties, the enormous reward. None of it made sense before. Now it made too much sense. You are not just lost, she whispered. You belong to someone important. Ash lowered his ears. For the first time since they met, he seemed almost nervous. Emma looked back at the notice. Anyone who found the pup could claim enough money to change their life forever. Her chest tightened. She thought about her tiny house, the overdue repairs, the years of struggling to earn respect from a pack that barely noticed her existence. The reward could solve every problem she had. Yet the moment the thought appeared, it vanished just as quickly. She looked down at Ash. All she saw was the frightened little wolf she had found alone in the forest. Not a reward, not an opportunity, just someone who needed help. Do not worry, she said softly. I am not turning you in. Ash blinked. Then, to her surprise, he stepped forward and pressed his head lightly against her hand. The simple gesture nearly broke her heart. A distant sound echoed through the trees. Voices, closer than before. Emma immediately stepped away from the sign. Searchers were moving along the road below, more than she had seen before. Some were on horseback. Others traveled on foot. The search was expanding. We need to go, she whispered. Ash stayed close as they left the trail and moved deeper into the woods. For nearly an hour, they traveled north through dense forest. The terrain gradually became steeper. Tall pines gave way to rocky slopes and narrow paths. Several times, Emma caught glimpses of people searching nearby. Each sight increased her unease. The circle was getting smaller. Eventually, they reached a clearing overlooking a wide valley. Emma stopped to catch her breath. The view stretched for miles. Forest rivers, mountains rising in the distance. Beautiful and peaceful. Then Ash suddenly moved in front of her. Every muscle in his small body became rigid. Emma followed his gaze. 3 strangers had appeared at the opposite side of the clearing. They were not threatening. They carried no visible weapons. Yet they were clearly searching. Their eyes immediately locked onto the silver pup beside her. Emma felt her pulse jump. One of the strangers took a cautious step forward. Wait, he called. We only want to help. Emma's instincts screamed otherwise. She stepped in front of Ash without hesitation. The movement surprised even her. She had no plan, no way to protect him if things went wrong. Yet her body made the decision before her mind could. Behind her, Ash remained completely still. The strangers exchanged surprised glances. None of them had expected an Omega to stand between them and the missing royal wolf. Far above the clearing, hidden among the cliffs overlooking the valley, Rowan Blackwood watched the scene unfold. His silver eyes never left Emma. She was afraid, exhausted, outnumbered, yet she still chose to shield his son. And in that moment, something inside the Alpha King changed forever. The clearing seemed to hold its breath. Emma stood with Ash behind her, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The three strangers remained where they were, careful not to move too quickly. None of them looked angry. None appeared dangerous. Yet something about the situation felt wrong. Too many people had been searching. Too many questions remained unanswered. Please, the oldest of the three called gently. You do not understand what is happening. Emma swallowed. Then explain it. The man exchanged a glance with his companions. The wolf belongs with his family. Emma almost laughed at the irony. Then maybe his family should not have lost him. The response surprised even her. Exhaustion and frustration had finally broken through the fear. The strangers fell silent. Behind her, Ash pressed closer. The small gesture strengthened her resolve. She had spent 2 days earning this little wolf's trust. She was not about to hand him over simply because someone demanded it. Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind swept across the valley. Pine branches swayed overhead. The strangers looked past Emma at the same moment. Their expressions changed instantly. Respect replaced tension. One of them lowered his head. Another stepped back. Confused, Emma turned. A tall figure had appeared at the edge of the clearing. She had no idea how long he had been standing there. 1 second the space behind her was empty. The next, he was there. Dark clothing, broad shoulders, silver eyes that seemed to reflect the mountain light itself. The forest felt different around him. Quieter, as though nature recognized his presence. Emma's breath caught. The stranger did not speak immediately. His gaze moved past her and settled on Ash. For the first time since she had found the pup, the little wolf stepped away from her side. Ash crossed the clearing without hesitation. The moment he reached the tall man, he pressed against his leg. Relief flooded the stranger's face. Not dramatic relief. Not loud relief. Something deeper. The kind a person feels after carrying fear for far too long. Emma stared. You know him. The man finally looked at her. Those silver eyes locked onto hers. The impact was strange. She could not explain it. It felt like recognition without memory. Familiarity without introduction. Yes, he said quietly. I know him. Ash sat beside him, completely calm now. Emma's chest tightened unexpectedly. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt something closer to loss. The little wolf she had protected no longer looked lost. He looked home. The strangers who had been searching lowered their heads respectfully toward the newcomer. That alone told Emma everything she needed to know. Whoever this man was, he carried authority. Real authority. The kind that could not be faked. Who are you? She asked. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The wind moved through the pines. Ash glanced back and forth between them. Then the stranger took a slow step forward. My name is Rowan Blackwood. Emma froze. Every story she had heard since childhood came rushing back at once. The Northern Territories. The royal bloodline. The Alpha King. Her pulse stumbled. She looked from Rowan to Ash and suddenly understood. The collar. The crest. The search. The reward. Everything. Ash was not merely important. He was a prince. And the man standing before her was the most powerful alpha in the kingdom. Yet Rowan's gaze never left her face. Not the clearing. Not the scouts. Not even his son. Only her. As if, after finding the prince he had spent days searching for, the most important discovery he had made in this forest was Emma Carter. Emma could not find her voice. The name alone carried the weight of countless stories. Rowan Blackwood. The Alpha King. The ruler whose territory stretched beyond the northern mountains. The man wolves spoke about in hushed voices around winter fires. Yet standing before her now, he did not look like a distant legend. He looked like a father who had finally found his lost child. Ash moved closer to Rowan and sat beside him, his tail brushing lightly against the grass. The sight made something unexpectedly tender settle in Emma's chest. For 2 days she had worried about him, protected him, and wondered whether anyone was searching. Now she had her answer. Someone had been searching every second. Rowan knelt beside the silver pup and rested a hand gently against his fur. Ash immediately leaned into the touch. Relief flashed across the Alpha King's face again, impossible to hide this time. Emma suddenly realized how frightened he must have been. Royal title or not, worry looked the same on everyone. Rowan slowly stood and faced her once more. You kept him safe, he said. The words were simple, yet they carried more sincerity than any compliment Emma had received in years. She looked away awkwardly. Anyone would have done the same. Several scouts exchanged knowing glances behind him. Rowan did not. No, he said quietly. Not everyone would have. Emma remembered the reward notice. The search parties. The people chasing Ash through the forest. She knew he was right. Many would have made a different choice. Rowan stepped closer. Not enough to make her uncomfortable. Just enough that she could clearly see the gratitude in his silver eyes. Why, he asked. Emma frowned slightly. Why what? Why protect him after learning who he was? The question caught her off guard. She looked down at Ash. The little wolf stared back at her. Suddenly the answer felt obvious. Because he was scared. Silence followed. Even the wind seemed to pause. Emma felt foolish the moment she said it aloud. The explanation sounded too simple. Yet it was the truth. She had never seen a prince. Never met a king. She had only seen a frightened little wolf who needed help. Rowan continued watching her. Something unreadable moved through his expression. Respect. Admiration. Perhaps something even deeper. Finally, he nodded once. Thank you. No grand speech followed. No royal ceremony. Somehow those two words meant more than either. Ash suddenly trotted across the clearing and stopped directly in front of Emma. Before she could react, he gently pressed his head against her hand one final time. Her throat tightened. You are going home now, she whispered. Ash remained there for a second longer before returning to Rowan's side. The Alpha King extended his hand toward her. Emma hesitated before taking it. Warmth spread through her fingers the moment their hands met. Strange. Familiar. Neither of them spoke about it. Yet both felt it. Somewhere deep inside, something had begun to change. Rowan released her hand slowly. Emma Carter, he said. This is not goodbye. Her heart skipped unexpectedly. Before she could respond, Ash looked up at his father and then back at her. The silver pup made a small sound of contentment and settled beside Rowan. High above them, sunlight broke through the clouds and illuminated the northern mountains. Emma watched as the royal party prepared to leave, unaware that the hardest chapter of her life had just ended. What she did not know was that the Alpha King had spent 2 days observing her courage, her kindness, and her heart. And Rowan Blackwood had no intention of forgetting the Omega, who chose compassion when everyone else chose convenience.